This one needs to change. 5G requires the installation of new equipment across the U.S.
So this pole here is 5G. This is the future right here.
You got it.
Every wireless company is working to build its own 5G network. Melissa Arnoldi leads AT&T's efforts.
If you don't already have one of these in your neighborhood,
Yep.
they're coming.
That's absolutely right.
What's good, world? This is Sharpwooded Speaks, and today we talk about the facts and the conspiracies of the infamous coronavirus. Stay tuned. Bye.
You know what's up, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. They all unwild when I'm around. I'm outer space, above the clouds. You know what's up, it's going down, it's going down.
5G is a weapon. It's used by the military. Do you know these 5G millimeter wave technologies are used to scatter crowds? You know, they drive up in this technology when they want to scatter a cloud, and they put out these frequencies.
Is 5G a weapon? Now, there are people out there and conspiracies out there that will have you believe that 5G is directly related to the coronavirus. The coronavirus started to spread from Wuhan, China, and that is also the place that is most advanced in 5G technology.
Because they get the feeling their skin is on fire. Because the human body, including the skin, is an antenna. It interacts with frequencies, and it receives and transmits information. At the cutting edge of understanding of DNA, scientists know that DNA is a receiver-transmitter of information. And so we are electromagnetic, electrical organisms, transmitters and receivers of information. When our electromagnetic fields are in balance and harmony, we have health. We have psychological health and we have physical health. The reason that this technological society is causing so much psychological and quote, physical disease is because these frequencies, technologically driven, and we live in this Wi-Fi world now and all the phone masts and all the rest of it, these technologically generated frequencies are scrambling the balance of the human electromagnetic electrical communication systems. And if you scramble them, you create a state of disharmony, dis-ease, which plays through to physical and mental, emotional, psychological dis-ease.
So the point being made of this conspiracy is basically during this electrification of the earth, these frequencies are like lowering the immune system and acting as causing cells to act like a magnet for the coronavirus. Now, I don't think that they believe that the coronavirus is directly from the 5G, but has something to do with it being spread so fast.
She says 5G uses high-frequency waves that support faster speeds, but don't travel as far as current wireless frequencies. So instead of relying on large cell phone towers spread far apart, they need small cell sites that are much closer together.
We're going to use our existing infrastructure today, whether it's light poles, whether it's street lights. We're going to make sure that we don't make it obtrusive to our customers and to the citizens.
Yet some don't share the enthusiasm.
The cell towers are called small cell towers, but they're not so small when they're in your front yard.
Donna Barron is protesting plans to convert light poles in her Montgomery County, Maryland neighborhood into small cell sites.
This will cause cancer.
She was one of several people who raised health concerns at a government hearing last month.
This stuff is untested on kids. Their safety is not certain.
These untested technologies are, at this time, not ready to be unleashed into our lives.
So here's the thing. A conspiracy is only a conspiracy until facts are presented. And I'm finding a lot of facts. And another interesting thing is that the human body is made up of water and ions, and our cells pretty much emit electricity everywhere in our body, and that's the way that they conduct electrical currents. and electricity is required for the nervous system to work. And the nervous system basically controls your brain and your feelings in your body. So that's the way it's possible for us to think and feel.
I say this to kids and anybody else. How long could you live without your smartphone? And then ask, what is an alcoholic? What, an alcoholic? Is someone addicted to alcohol? Yeah. Why is he addicted to alcohol? Because he can't stop drinking it. Yeah. But you can't put your phone down. And if you do, within a few minutes, you pick it up again because you're addicted to it. So are you controlling that bit of technology in your hand, or is that controlling you? That's controlling you. So do you want your life controlled by a bit of technology? Do you want the rest of your life controlled by it? Or are you now going to go, I'm putting this down? The brain processes information electrically. It communicates with the cellular structure electrically. And it operates within a certain band of frequency. If you can broadcast frequencies carrying information, this technology's long been known, carrying information and perceptions within the frequency that the brain decodes information, the brain will decode those frequencies and will have those perceptions. You can externally, even without connection to AI, although that's the piece de la resistance, if you like, that's the kind of holy grail. But even before that, you can influence people's perceptions externally by broadcasting these frequencies that we interact with, because we are antenna.
Now, I find this very interesting because frequency, the word frequency means a lot to me because I have an album called Frequency. And it's basically, the definition of frequency is a measurement, and a measurement is usually of waves like sound waves, light waves, radio waves, which have a lot to do with 5G and the signals that it is shooting out and that we are receiving.
Cell phone equipment emits radiation, but research on its health effects has been inconsistent. According to the National Cancer Institute, a limited number of studies have shown some evidence of statistical association of cell phone use and brain tumor risks.
But 5G and the corona. So, cells can be disrupted by radiation. Radiation is basically a frequency that causes your cells and your atoms to be unstable. So when you have things like cell phone towers and cell phones and satellites shooting frequencies that are supercharged up down to the earth, it messes with our body, our immune system, our thoughts, our feelings, things of that nature. And I've seen something, on the internet where Prince was discussing the same thing that I'm talking about right now.
This phenomena of chemtrails. And, when I was a kid, I used to see these trails in the sky all the time. And so that's cool. A jet just went over. And then you started to see a whole bunch of them. And next thing you know, everybody in your neighborhood was fighting and arguing, and you didn't know why. Okay? And you really didn't know why. I mean, everybody was fighting. So he started riffing about the chemtrails. And he started to say things that hit home so hard. And I would recommend that everybody try to get what he said online or wherever and try to get a copy of it and just listen to it. Because I was so moved that I had to write the song.
Now, that's what Prince was talking about was chemtrails. And even though that is not what I'm talking about in this video, it's just another undisclosed project or experiment on the public that has been put out there. And about chemtrails is basically like, the contrails you see, condensation trails you see in the sky when planes fly by and it leaves that little water vapor, that cloud that follows. And it used to be there for long periods of time, and people would write things like, I love you, or will you marry me? Well, after a couple of years, they started doing those same lines, again, and they would disappear super fast, and people would notice, and they started asking questions and testing the ground, and certain plants were dying, and et cetera, and some people found out that it was aluminum and barium that was being shot out of these planes. Aluminum and barium are types of metals that can be ionized in the atmosphere, which could help things like radars, maybe even some of it can help control the weather.
So a few closing thoughts on this. What I said at the beginning, it's much easier to think of new methods that might conceivably offer lower environmental risk for the same radiative forcing than the existing methods. That's the point of this from my point of view. There's a huge scope for new methods, because once you realize you can make things by direct condensation from vapor, then all sorts of different compounds are possible. But it's much, much harder to actually figure out the environmental risks and effectiveness of these new methods than it is to cook them up. And that is going to be a fundamental ongoing problem here.
At the time that this started happening, there were people out there saying, I can't sleep, the air is concentrated with these chemicals and it causes me physical symptoms. They could say they taste it, they smell it, it burns their sinuses, causes inflammation, rises in blood pressure, stomach issues, headaches, and this all started happening when they started the chemtrails, more often.
And do something that was an analog to nature, because we have some idea what the downsides of what nature does are. Nevertheless, there might be some good reasons to think about alumina. It turns out, first of all, there's been a lot of work on the environmental consequences of alumina in the stratosphere, because it's in shuttle exhausts. There's a bunch of papers going back to the 70s that look at the radiative and ozone-destroying properties of alumina in the stratosphere, and those make you think it might be useful. The big deal really is that alumina has 4 times the volumetric radiative forcing for small particles as does sulfur. And that means you have 4 times less surface area for the same radiative forcing. And this is a much bigger deal. You have roughly 16 times less the coagulation rate. And that's the thing that really drives removal. So you could get away, we think, with much smaller mass fluxes. But we haven't run those studies yet, so that might be wrong. The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying aluminum vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that. There's a big literature that's already looked at that. We've been doing a little work on delivery. There's a study that an aircraft engineering firm called Aurora Flight Sciences is doing, and all the results of that study will be completely public. There's nothing proprietary about this. We're going to be inviting people in for a mid-study meeting soon. And they've been looking at a bunch of different delivery options, but the bottom line is that it seems pretty cost-effective and easy to do this with aircraft that are not very different from conventional aircraft. So there's from their point of view, nothing radical and hard. For them, radical and hard is making aircraft that fly at 100,000 feet, but not ones that fly at 70. Give you a little sense of some of that. One thing that study's turned up is that some high-class business jets, like the Gulfstream, have wing designs that are very efficient. So with slightly different engine choices, they can easily deliver large weights up to sort of 20 kilometers or a little higher. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. So there's some ideas of that. There are now studies you see on the lower right. These are preliminary. Look at the total cost to deliver a megaton a year to the stratosphere as a function of height and so on. The bottom line of this is simply sort of confirming earlier work that Alan's done, that it's so cheap that it doesn't matter. So the fact that it's cheap isn't necessarily a good thing at all, as I'll come to in a second. The fact that it's cheap is part of the hard problem of governance. The fact that it's cheap means any small state or even conceivably individuals could do this, and that is a very dangerous thing. So the fact it's cheap is not necessarily good, but I think it more or less is a fact. So this is where I would push back on the statements that it doesn't exist.
I mean, don't take it from me. This is a geoengineer talking, There's scientists out there. There's a lot of credible sources out there, with valid points and opinions on this matter. So it's not just some big conspiracy that people are crazy for thinking about it. I mean, cell phones, cell towers, the cells in our body. There's a reason for all this, trust me.
If technology is going to be the servant rather than the governor, it has to serve the interests of humanity and humanity does not have to serve it. We're in a situation now where humanity is serving technology. And it will be serving AI. Increasingly, it is serving AI in its algorithmic expression. Every thought, every emotional response is a frequency. It generates a frequency, and it is of itself a frequency. Hate is a frequency, and it's different to love. You know, when you are in a room and there's lots of aggression and conflict and hatred, you feel it. What do people say? Oh God, you can cut the atmosphere with a knife in there. That is because the frequencies of hate and conflict have been so generated, they have changed the electromagnetic field of the room.
Okay, so 5G is going to be weaponized against us potentially.
Yeah, but the point being that they worked out the frequencies of various emotions, including rage and what have you. And basically, they can play across a community these frequencies without anyone knowing, and it starts to have an effect. And you find there is very, very little that won't wait till you're on a landline, and you can have a proper conversation with someone without this burning your brain and without you constantly on it. Because what is happening, and this cabal knows this, for a very long time, indeed right up to recent times, science believed that once the brain was formed, that was it. That's how it stayed. Now they know it's very different through this thing they call brain placidity. Brain placidity means the brain is changing in the way it processes information and the neuron networks it creates to process information on the basis of information received. So what we've had in this very short time is the human brain bombarded with digital electrical stimulus that it's never experienced before. 5G doesn't travel well because of the nature of its frequency. So instead of big towers, as we have now, broadcasting these frequencies long distances, it won't do that. And it doesn't go through solid objects, what we call solid objects, very well either. So to overcome that, there are going to be boxes broadcasting 5G, this weapon, down every street, all over the world. You're talking phenomenal numbers of these boxes, broadcasting like on the lamp standard outside your children's bedroom and stuff, broadcasting this stuff. There's no way you'll be able to go where you won't be in a field of 5G. It's changing the human brain. It's changing the way the brain processes information, and how we process information dictates our perception of reality. And people might not realize why they're feeling it, they start to feel it. And then what they do is they trigger that with an event, maybe some guy is attacked by the police or something, or somebody's arrested for something they didn't commit, and now there's the trigger. The blue touch paper's been lit of this manufactured frequency-driven rage, and you have mass riots and what have you, and people do things that they wouldn't normally do. And you can make people depressed. You know, the American military, they've admitted this. They have technology that fires frequencies at the enemy that basically breaks the enemy's spirit, so they give up and put their weapons down, because you're not supporting them going down this road of technological control. So when people say there's nothing I can do, I'm just little me, first of all, you're not little me, that's just a perception of yourself. But there's endless things we can do. The question is, are we going to do them? And that answer to that question will decide if we end up in this technological dystopia or whether we don't. And we better start making the choice quick, because it's moving.
Okay, so I'm gonna end it here because this video is already way too long. I hope it piques your interest. I hope you broaden your horizons because of it. I hope you can start a conversation over it. Please subscribe. This has been Sharpwitted Speaks. Get with it or get lost.
You know what's up, it's going